Good morning. It is Monday, March 1st. I'm Jason Stanton. I serve at First Lutheran in Onalaska, Wisconsin. This is my morning musing today. We're again using the Again and Again Lenten devotional. So I'm going from the first written devotional by Reverend T. Denise Anderson. And she got me thinking about, this week the theme is Again and Again, we're called to listen. And it is a theme that I am hearing all over the place. I love listening to podcasts whenever I can, doing stuff out in the yard or washing dishes or cleaning whatever in the house or mowing or whatever. I just like to have a podcast on. Sometimes music too, but most of the times I'll be listening to podcasts. And one that I'm listening to now is examining the changing dynamics of being a referee in the United States. Not literally, although they do look at basketball referees in the NBA, but also all kinds of referee type people. And when you think of it, there's a lot of referees, people that make sure things are being done fair, right? So you've got, like, when a house is sold, you've got an appraisal person, a person that does appraisals. When you come to a court of law, obviously a judge would be a type of referee. And they actually did one podcast on judges and how the life of judges is changing so much. And the reason they're changing so much is they're so much more visible. It used to be that you'd never hear from a judge. Judges didn't write books. They didn't show up on daytime talk shows, but now they do. Judges are watched. We could, if we wanted to, find out the address of where judges live. Judges are getting more harassed than ever before because people are watching them. They've been studied to the point where I heard on this podcast, somebody said it's been studied that judgments made just before lunch are typically harsher than judgments made just after lunch. And they think that's because judges are just a little more cranky toward mealtime than they are after mealtime. Like, that's how human judges are. Aren't we all a little more cranky and more apt to kind of, not be as friendly right before lunch as after? So anyway, I mention all that because they had a judge on there that was trying to talk about, like, what do you think makes you a good judge? Because he had risen through the ranks and become a federal appeals court judge. And he's trying to teach baby judges how to live in this more emotional, a world where feelings and emotions are valued more than they used to be. It used to be that the law was completely, objective and there was no emotions connected. But, he had been in a court, for example, where people were getting divorced, custody battles, all kinds of emotional things. And anyway, they asked him, what do you think makes you a good judge? And he said the same thing that I've heard when people have been asked, what makes you a good salesman? What makes you a good pastor? What makes you a good husband or wife? What makes you a good parent? What makes a good disciple? Same answer for all of them. Listen. Listen. That's it. Listen. And don't just hear. It's not just that your ears function physically, but that you listen. That's what this day's commentary on Mark chapter 8 is about. She talks about how we don't exactly incentivize the telling of hard truths. Hard truths trouble the waters of our understanding and challenge notions of what is real. For Peter, hearing Jesus foretell his agonizing death and resurrection probably made no sense. Just before this, Peter had named Jesus Messiah. How could the Christ talk like this? Peter wants to quiet Jesus. Jesus would instead quiet him. Have you ever heard something where you just get defensive and so you just say something back at them, or maybe you shut down, or I don't even know. But Peter, of course, hears Jesus say something he doesn't want to hear, and so Peter's like, he pulls him aside and rebukes Jesus. At the transfiguration of Jesus, Peter's no better. A sight that may have been more in line with Peter's messianic imagination, right? Lots of light works. He wants to build altars, Peter does, to mark the event. Let's set this place up to just be here, mark this. But again, Peter is quieted and he is told to listen. The Lenten journey calls us to examine the things in which our hearts are invested. How important is comfort to us? Would we be willing to listen to hard truths and be changed by them, even if it proved to be difficult? Or are we committed to the status quo, because though it may be imperfect, it's at least familiar? Again and again, we're implored to listen, especially when what we hear is unsettling. And that leads me back to on Thursday last week, all the pastors in the La Crosse Area Synod, ELCA churches, had a time where we learned more about racial equity and the challenges that surround leading a congregation through conversations like this. And again, there's so many hard truths, like I just read of in the devotion. It's not fun to listen to the truth that what I was taught growing up in public schools was only taught from one angle, and that was from the angle of white supremacy. I mean, it just was. It's undeniable. I never learned about bombs being dropped in Oklahoma on one of the wealthier black neighborhoods in the country. That was never taught to me in 5th grade or 10th grade or college or anywhere else. How many lessons did we learn about Native Americans in elementary school? I mean, it took me until college to hear about what we did to Native Americans on the Trail of Tears, for example. There's a great book, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, very famous. I was assigned to read that in college. That was eye-opening. It's not fun learning all these things out. We'd rather stay ignorant. We'd rather not know. And when we do hear it, that becomes then the next question. What do we do with knowing? Do we resist knowing more? Do we tuck that knowledge away? And so as a disciple following Jesus, when we hear a call to stuff that's hard, no matter what that stuff is, it's not just about racial equity or inclusion of all people into, like, whatever is hard in our lives, and we're called to take it on, that's not always fun. And so what do we do with this? Not only the grace in which we stand, but then the freedom we have to either listen or not. And so as we repent through this season of Lent, which means coming back to God, returning to God, we are called again and again to listen. We keep faith alive.